Friends, I hope you will like our story. If you enjoy it, please like the video. And if you are new to the channel, subscribe. And yes, don't forget to press the notification bell so that you get the next update first. My name is Arav, and I am 25 years old. In my family, besides my parents, there were only two brothers. I had an elder brother, and I didn't have any sister. My elder brother had a very short temper from the beginning. He used to get angry over small matters and did not even respect our parents, which caused them a lot of disappointment. I was young at that time, but understood the importance of respecting my parents. Since my brother was older, he had been spoiled by the excessive affection of our parents. Seeing one son go astray, my parents raised me with good values. I was not like my brother. My behavior was calm and gentle. I used to speak to everyone with respect, whereas my brother's behavior was very irritable. Then one day, my brother suddenly created a fuss about his marriage at home. At that time, my parents didn't want him to get married because he didn't respect them at home, so how would he respect his wife? My mother didn't want to entrust someone else's daughter to their ill-mannered son. They were afraid that he might treat his wife the same way he treated his parents. However, my brother told the family that he had already chosen a girl and wanted to marry her. He was adamant about marrying that girl, who worked in his office. Eventually, my parents gave in to his insistence and took a proposal to the girl's house. Thus, my brother married her, and she became our sister-in-law. After my sister-in-law came into our home, my brother's behavior changed significantly. Gradually, he started living more harmoniously with all of us. My parents were happy and relieved that their son had improved a lot after the arrival of his wife. I had completed my school education and was now preparing to get admission to college. I mostly focused on my studies and didn't get involved much in family matters or pay much attention to what was going on at home. During this time, fights started happening between my brother and sister-in-law. One day, the argument between them escalated so much that my sister-in-law decided to leave my brother, and he easily let her go. Whatever the issue was, it was between the two of them, and none of us had any role in it. My parents tried very hard to mediate and make them understand, but neither of them was willing to listen. I didn't know what the fights were about or what triggered that particular argument, which led my sister-in-law to leave. My mother didn't tell me anything either. It wasn't as if their marriage was forced. They had married out of their own choice and were happy together initially. However, after a year of marriage, disputes began between them. I couldn't understand why, even though they had a love marriage, they were ready to part ways. I only knew that my sister-in-law was making various accusations against my brother, but I didn't understand much because I was young at that time. When she wanted to separate, my brother willingly let her go. She returned to her parental home, and my brother decided to divorce her and move to another city for work. My parents tried hard to stop him, but he never listened to anyone. He packed his belongings and moved to another city, taking up a job there. My parents worried about him a lot, but he called them and reassured them not to worry, saying he was happy and doing well in his new job. He also promised to send them money from his salary. I also explained to my parents that my brother was mature enough to make his own decisions. Marrying his wife and then separating from her were both his choices, so there was no need for them to worry. Eventually, my parents learned to live without him. They no longer cared much about where he was or what he was doing. However, my brother visited us occasionally and kept in touch over the phone. I also spoke to him from time to time. Time passed, and I completed my education. Now, I was looking for a good job. One day, my brother called my father, and after asking about all of us, he shared some news that left us stunned. My father had mentioned to him that I was looking for a good job and wanted to gain experience by working in a reputable company before considering a higher salary position. In response, my brother suggested, "You can send Arav to work in my position because I am going to Canada for a few months on a business trip with my company's team. If Arav wants, he can take my place at my company. It will take me around 3 to 4 months to return, so Arav will have enough time to gain some valuable work experience." Then my brother added, "Besides, I recently got married, and I don't want to leave my wife alone in this city." This statement shocked my father, and he asked, "Have you remarried?" My brother, feeling a bit embarrassed, replied, "Yes, Papa, I got married again. I'm sorry I didn't tell you earlier, but it has only been 15 days since my wedding. She is a very good and cultured girl, and we are living a happy life together. She's from this city, and we are very happy with each other. I didn't tell you because I felt ashamed that I divorced my first wife and remarried." My father responded, "All right, but you should have at least introduced us to her." My brother assured him, "I will definitely bring her to meet you all once I return from Canada. She also wants to meet you. But until then, you need to send Arav here. This way, he will gain work experience, and my wife won't be alone at home. Arav's presence will provide her with some support. I will be able to go to Canada without any worries." Although my father was somewhat disappointed about my brother's remarriage, he eventually, as always, gave in to his words. However, he found the job offer a good opportunity for me. So, he decided that I would take my brother's position and live in his house while working there. I had no objection to this arrangement, and I also thought it would be a good opportunity to meet my new sister-in-law. The following week, I arrived at my brother's house. My brother was overjoyed to see me and said, "Now that you're here, I won't have to worry about anything. Come, let me introduce you to your sister-in-law." After his second marriage, my brother's behavior had softened again. However, he always reserved his strict behavior for our parents. With me, he was always gentle. He continued, "Your sister-in-law will be very happy to see you. Ever since I told her about you, she's been eagerly waiting to meet you. She was initially quite worried about being alone here, but when I told her you would take care of things, she felt reassured. She's cheerful, just like you." When I arrived at my brother's house and my sister-in-law opened the door, I was stunned. She was much younger than my brother, looking around 20 or 21 years old, and incredibly beautiful. She was nothing less than an angel or a movie star. Her height, her health, and the glow on her face left me mesmerized. Until then, I had never felt attracted to any girl, but the moment I saw her, I was captivated by her beauty. Her long, thick black hair flowed freely, swaying in the breeze. I was so lost in looking at her that I forgot to blink. I couldn't believe that this was my new sister-in-law. Even the previous sister-in-law wasn't as beautiful as she was. I couldn't fathom how she had married my brother, who was quite ordinary in appearance. I was completely lost in thoughts about her when my brother suddenly jolted me back to reality, saying, "Arav, what's the matter? This is your sister-in-law. Aren't you going to greet her?" I quickly greeted her and then stepped inside the house. My sister-in-law began preparing tea and snacks for me, but I kept stealing glances at her, unable to process what I was seeing. My brother was nearly 32 years old, whereas she looked like she should have married someone around 22 or 23. Yet, she had married someone twice her age, who had already been married once before. I began thinking to myself that maybe Nandini, my sister-in-law, was actually around my brother's age, but she had taken such good care of herself that she looked like a 21 or 22-year-old girl. Whatever the case, my brother was incredibly lucky to have such a beautiful second wife. She seemed very happy, and her name was Nandini. After having tea and snacks, my brother started preparing for his departure. He told me that he would be leaving for Canada on an early morning flight the next day. Then he handed me a file saying, "This contains all the work I need you to handle. If you don't understand something, you can call me. I've sent you the company address, and you can get all the information once you arrive there. I've already informed them about you, so you won't face any issues. Just join the job comfortably." Hearing this, I felt very happy. My brother then said, "Look, Arav, I'm leaving your sister-in-law here solely in your care. One more thing. She recently fell down the stairs and got injured, so she's been in a lot of pain. I took her to the doctor, and he said she might continue to experience recurring pain for a few months. So you need to take good care of her and take her to the doctor if necessary. Also, whatever tasks she asks you to do, please help her with them, as you're her only support here. Her family doesn't live in this city, they're in another town. So, while I'm gone, you must look after her." Listening to my brother, I reassured him, "Don't worry, brother. I'll take good care of her. You can go to Canada with peace of mind." I promised myself that I wouldn't let my sister-in-law, Nandini, lack anything. That night, she prepared a delicious dinner for us, and my brother had finished his packing. The next morning, my brother left for Canada, leaving just Nandini and me alone in the house. Since we were still new to each other, we didn't talk much initially. That same day, I went to the office address my brother had given me to start my job. I submitted all the necessary documents and spoke to the manager. Since my brother had already informed them about me, they hired me without any issues. I started going to the office the next day, and I quickly made some good friends there. Both men and women worked in the office, and many of them seemed quite impressed with me. When I came home in the evenings, Nandini and I gradually started talking more openly. One night, I was in my room working on some office tasks when I suddenly heard Nandini calling me. I quickly ran to the kitchen and was stunned to see how beautiful she looked. She was wearing a lovely nightgown, the kind women often wear when sleeping. It was form-fitting and accentuated her beauty. I quickly looked away, feeling a bit flustered. She asked, "Arav, would you like some coffee?" I was just making some for myself and thought I'd ask you too. I told my sister-in-law, "Please make some coffee. I'll drink it." Saying this, I started heading toward my room when she stopped me, saying, "Hey, where are you going? I'll make coffee for you in 10 minutes. After that, we'll go to the terrace and enjoy it together. The breeze is really nice up there, and having coffee while strolling in the cool air on the terrace is a different kind of pleasure." Hearing her, I became a bit tense because, at that moment, I was feeling strange emotions that made everything seem off. So I made an excuse and said, "You go ahead to the terrace alone, because I'm busy with some important office work right now." Without listening to her further, I returned to my room. A little while later, my sister-in-law brought the coffee mug to my room. As she handed me the coffee, some of it accidentally spilled on my clothes, and she panicked. She quickly came closer to clean it, and in doing so, she touched me. At that moment, I felt a strange wave of emotion toward her. I immediately stepped back and said, "Don't worry, I'm fine. You should go and rest in your room." I quickly went to the bathroom and told myself, "She's my sister-in-law, even though she's my age. I shouldn't have any inappropriate thoughts about her." Later, on my day off, my sister-in-law and I went shopping. I bought some clothes for myself, and she also bought a few things. That day, I found out that she was actually 21 years old, because in the middle of our conversation, I asked, "How did you meet my brother?" She replied, "Actually, your brother saved my life. One day, I had an accident, and your brother took me to the hospital." That's how we met, and gradually our meetings progressed. I am an orphan. I have no family. I lived with my uncle and aunt since childhood, but they treated me very badly. When I met your brother, we decided to get married. I knew that your brother had been divorced before, but I started liking him, and he liked me too. So, I didn't waste any time and married him, and now we are living a happy life together. He didn't tell the family about our marriage, because he was worried that they might feel bad about him marrying an orphan girl without any dowry. I told my sister-in-law, "Our family isn't like that. My parents are very kind people. But you did the right thing. My brother used to be a bit strict, but after marrying you, he has softened a lot." My sister-in-law said, "Yes, your brother has changed a lot after marrying me. He takes great care of me. See, he was leaving, but he still cared enough to leave you here to look after me." Everything else was fine, but I had noticed something strange. Ever since my brother had gone to Canada, my sister-in-law started wearing new and somewhat unusual short clothes around the house. It didn't seem right to me because her outfits were quite revealing and odd. Then I thought maybe she doesn't pay much attention to such things, and perhaps she sees me as her younger brother, so she feels comfortable wearing those clothes around me. I decided to ignore it and got busy with my work. Meanwhile, things were going well at my office because my boss told me, "You work just like your brother, and I'm very impressed with you." At the office, I had made a friend who had a very similar personality to mine. The boss assigned us both to work on a project together. One day, I invited my friend home for dinner and informed my sister-in-law so she could prepare a meal for him. My friend Suman had treated me to parties at restaurants many times, so I wanted to invite him for a home-cooked meal. My sister-in-law was an excellent cook, so I invited him without hesitation, and she didn't mind at all. She made all the necessary preparations, and Suman came over for dinner that night. After that day, my friend started visiting our home more frequently, and he developed a good rapport with my sister-in-law. She would often prepare tea and snacks, or sometimes cook delicious meals for both of us. Because of this, my friend would always praise her, saying, "Your sister-in-law is very kind and thoughtful. She doesn't even seem like your sister-in-law. She feels like one of our friends. She treats us just like equals. Sometimes it feels like she's not just your sister-in-law, but a really good friend." One day, my friend asked my sister-in-law how far she had studied. Hearing this, her face fell. Seeing her sad expression, we asked, "What happened?" She told us that her uncle and aunt had only allowed her to study up to high school. After that, they outright refused to spend any more money on her education, so she had no choice but to stop studying, even though she wanted to continue. I told my sister-in-law, "But now things are different. If you want, you can restart your education. I don't think my brother would stop you." My friend added, "You know, there are excellent schools in our city. You seem very intelligent. You could even study privately from home." I agreed and said, "Yes, he's right. You should pursue further education because, without education, a person remains incomplete." Smiling, my sister-in-law replied, "I would love to do that, but I recently got injured, and sometimes I still feel sudden pain. So, I can't focus on studying right now. Also, now that I'm married, I need to take care of the household. In the future, when I have children, how will I manage both my studies and looking after them? Studying while raising kids would be too much for me." Hearing this, my friend and I were deep in thought. I then suggested, "Why don't you hire a maid to help with household chores? That way, you can focus on your education." Hearing this, her face lit up, and she said, "That's a great idea." We started discussing filling out the admission forms, but my sister-in-law insisted, "Before doing anything, I want to get your brother's permission. Only after he agrees will I proceed with the admission and finalize everything." In the evening, my sister-in-law asked my brother about it, and he happily agreed. She was very excited about continuing her education and said, "I've always had a passion for studying." But then she added, "Arav, I'm nervous. How will I study after so many years? I reassured her, Don't worry, I'll take care of everything. She asked, How will you handle everything? If I go to school, people might make fun of me for starting my education again at this age. And if I study privately at home, I won't understand everything on my own. I need someone to explain things to me. I told her, That's a small issue. You don't need to stress at all. I'll teach you during my free time. If you don't understand anything, feel free to ask me. Hearing this, she was overjoyed. I enrolled her in a private school, so she didn't need to attend classes in person. I also arranged for a maid, although she said she could only start after a few days. From then on, I regularly helped my sister-in-law with her studies, and sometimes my friend would come over to help as well. The three of us often went out together, sometimes for dinner and other times to shopping malls. We developed a close friendship. When I spoke to my parents at home, I always told them that my sister-in-law was very kind and took care of me like a younger brother. This reassured my parents, and they didn't worry about me. One night, my sister-in-law suddenly called me to her room. When I got there, she said that she had severe back pain. The doctor had given her an oil for massages, and when my brother was around, he would help her with it. But now that he was away, she couldn't reach her back properly and asked if I could apply the oil for her. I quickly took the oil from her and started massaging her back. However, while I was doing so, I noticed that she was giving me strange, sidelong glances. Feeling uncomfortable, I finished the massage quickly and made an excuse, saying I was feeling very sleepy and needed to go to bed. I hurriedly left the room and returned to my own. Gradually, I began to notice that my sister-in-law would ask me to do small tasks for her, like tying the strings of her sari blouse, helping her put on a necklace, or sometimes fastening the hook of her nightgown when she called me to her room at night. She would also ask for back massages, saying she couldn't reach her back. While these tasks weren't inherently wrong, since I was there to help her, it was the way she behaved that made me uneasy. Whenever she asked for help, she would try to get close to me and give me strange looks, which made me feel very nervous. I had even started to suspect that maybe my sister-in-law had something else on her mind. At this point, I began to distance myself from her and spoke very little. She always told me to call her by her name since she was the same age as me, but I refused, saying, You are my sister-in-law, and I respect you a lot. I can't call you by your name. One night, it was raining heavily, and suddenly there was a knock at my door. There was a storm outside, and my sister-in-law was at the door. She came into my room and said, Can I sleep here tonight? The thunder is very loud, and it scares me. I can't sleep because I feel anxious. Hearing this, I got nervous. I started thinking, Is my sister-in-law really going to sleep in my room all night? What might happen next? I told her, You are an adult and you're scared. Don't be afraid. I'm in the room right next to yours. If you need anything, you can call me. You can sleep comfortably in your own room. But she didn't listen to anything I said and immediately went and lay down on my bed. I stood off to the side watching her. Then she said to me, Why are you standing over there? Come, lie down here too. Her words made me feel very uncomfortable, and I didn't know what to do. I told her, I'm already awake, so I thought I'd sit and do some office work for a while. Making this excuse, I quietly sat down with my laptop, waiting for her to fall into a deep sleep. After a while, I thought she had fallen asleep, so I quietly got up and lay down on the sofa. The next morning, my sister-in-law woke up and complained, asking why I had slept on the sofa and why I was so troubled because of her. She showed a lot of concern, saying, Arav, you couldn't sleep properly all night because of me. I told her it wasn't a big deal. After that, I started talking to her even less. I mostly kept to my work and she began to complain about it. She said, "Arav, you are not the same as before. Now you hardly talk to me, and you don't take me out anywhere." I replied, "Actually, there's a lot of workload at the office, so I've been a bit busy. That's why I can't make time for you." Saying this, I went back to my room and locked the door from the inside. But that night, once again, my sister-in-law called me into her room and asked me to massage her back. As I started massaging her, she suddenly sat up and said, "You haven't told me yet. What do you like the most?" I replied, "Actually, I really enjoy reading different kinds of books, and I also love horse riding." Since she asked me, I asked her back, "And what do you like?" She looked at me in a strange way and said, "I also like horse riding." I said to her, "Wow, your likes are quite similar to mine." At that moment, an odd smile spread across her face, sending a wave of anxiety through my entire body. I was drenched in sweat. There was an awkward silence between us, and she kept trying to signal something to me, which I started to understand all too well. Suddenly, I snapped out of it and lost my composure. I yelled at her, "What kind of things are you saying to me?" Hearing this, she got a little flustered and said, "Arav, you might be misunderstanding me. I didn't mean it that way." I immediately responded, "I don't think I'm misunderstanding you." Saying this, I walked out of her room. I was furious and confused about why my sister-in-law had said such things and made such gestures toward me. Her behavior no longer seemed right to me. After that day, I stopped talking to her even more. Although she tried hard to reconcile with me and kept explaining repeatedly that it wasn't what I thought, I pretended to accept her explanation and forgave her. But deep down, I didn't believe her. One day, I suddenly felt unwell at the office, so I came home early. When I got back, I was shocked to hear the sound of my friend Suman laughing in my sister-in-law's room. Suman had taken leave from the office that day, saying he had to attend a distant relative's wedding with his family. But what was he doing here alone with my sister-in-law? I had already been suspicious of her, but now Suman was lying to me and coming here too. I couldn't have imagined this scenario. I quietly stood there and listened to their conversation. They were both making fun of me. My sister-in-law said, "Your friend Arav is such a fool. I've given him so many hints, but I think he lacks any manly qualities. That's why he always avoids me. I see true manliness in you." Suman laughed and replied, "Forget about Arav. He's a coward. Stay happy with me." What I saw next left me stunned. What rightfully belonged only to my brother was now being given to Suman. Seeing all this, I was enraged. I decided then and there that I would expose my sister-in-law's true nature to my brother. She was betraying him, and I couldn't let that happen. So, I called my brother and told him everything I had seen and heard. My brother was furious and asked me to act normally until he returned in 2 days. When my brother arrived 2 days later, he immediately started beating her and shouted, "You crazy woman! I asked you to impress my brother, but you started having fun with his friend instead." Hearing this, I was shocked and confused. What kind of conversation was this? I asked my brother, "What are you talking about?" He replied, "Arav, I actually needed your help. I am impotent and wanted a child. I needed the bloodline to stay within the family. My first wife also left me because of this, and humiliated me in front of many people by calling me impotent. I didn't see anyone better than you to give me an heir for my family, so I brought you here under a pretense. I wanted you to have a relationship with my wife, so she could become the mother of your child. But instead, she seduced your friend." Crying, his wife said, "I tried so hard to seduce your brother, but he never fell for my charms. What else could I do? You wanted a child, so I targeted his friend instead." Listening to their conversation, I was stunned. This meant that they were both trying to use me. How could my brother do this to me? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Realizing that I might run away, my brother suddenly hit me on the head with a stick, and I fell unconscious. When I woke up, I was in a room with my hands and feet tied to prevent me from escaping. I could hear them talking outside. He said, "We need to get a child from him at any cost. If he escapes, he'll tell everyone the truth. We need to keep him locked in the house." His wife replied, "Don't worry. I'll give him sleeping pills and get what we need from him. Everything will be fine after that." Hearing their conversation, I was completely shocked. I knew I had to escape from there somehow and reveal the truth to my parents, because only they could save me. I tried hard to untie the ropes myself, but then I saw Suman climbing into the room through the window. He started untying me. I angrily asked him, "Why are you here?" I was furious at him, but he said, "Your sister-in-law is a vile woman. I came to meet her at the door, but I overheard your entire conversation." That's when I realized how cunning she is, and that your brother is involved too. Your life was in danger, so I came to save you. Hearing this, my heart softened toward Suman because I had started hating him since that day. He quickly untied me, and we both ran far away from there. I needed to tell my parents the whole truth, so I called them and explained everything. They immediately asked me to come home. I thanked my friend and told him I was heading to my parents' house. I didn't even have my wallet with me, so he gave me some money to get home. Some relationships bring shame to the very meaning of relationships, and we should avoid any connection with such toxic bonds. Friends, I hope you liked our story. If you did, please like the video. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe, and make sure to press the notification bell so you'll get the next update first.